Yes, thank you very much. I'm quite honored and privileged to be invited to our talk today on this very vital topic. A lot have been written and said about the Kiriji War, so I'm not going to go into too much of the details of the background, but basically I want to focus on the aspect of the war as it played itself out.
Obviously, this is not as.
Yeah, so basically, I want to give the narrative from Ife perspective of the Kiriji War. So basically, the war that started in 1877 thereabout was a build-up to a series of events. And at the onset of the war, Ife was not involved. The Ife role was more of how do you call it, a conciliatory role. They were trying to be like a mediator between the Ijesha and the Ekiti Parapor and the Ibadan forces. However, event quickly overcame that particular posture that Ife took. And this, there were two significant events that happened. The first was the fact that the Balogun of Ife that later became the Oni of Ife, Oni Ayikiti, was killed together with a number of his troops by poison. I think the river was poisoned. There was a version of the story that suggested that the river where they were camped were poisoned. And there was another version of the story that came up with the information that it was the horse that he was riding that was poisoned. And there was a taboo that was built around the fact that the Oni must not fall from the back of a horse. And if he did, the consequence would be death. So at any rate, Ayikiti died the following day after he sustained the injury from the poisoning. And then the pace of the war quickly escalated within Ife. And Ife was still kind of like playing a mediation role. But at that point in time, it was becoming very clear that Ife needed to be on the side with Ijesha, because the common boundary that Ife shared with Ijesha, they needed to be able to support with each other. So while the war was going on, there was another commotion on the eastern flank of Ife, which is Ondo. Geographically, Ondo is situated to the east side of Ife, and there was already a breakout of the war that occurred there. So the leader of the Ife camp then was a prince called Prince Derin Ologbenla. He was later to become the Oni of Ife. And he was called upon to come to the rescue of the problem that was taking place in Ondo. As it would happen, the invitation was sent to him by the Ifa priest that by the name Ajibike, the person's name was Ajibike. This person used to be an Ifa consultant to one of the previous Oni of Ife, Oni Abewela, and he was also the same consultant on Ifa matters, ritual consultant to the Oshimawe of Ondo, Arile Kolasi. Anyway, so what then happened was that when the internal riot to remove Arile Kolasi, the Oshimawe of Ondo, when that started, the Ajibike man, who was the common friend that the two of them had, sent a message, an emissary to Derin Ologbenla, who was already at the war front, the Kiriji war front in Ijesha. So as a result of which, Derin then moved his troop from Ilesha to Ondo. However, he didn't go straight to Ondo. He just camped on the outskirts of the town within a very thick forest, the area that is now called Okeigo. And from there, he was able to launch an attack to rescue the situation in Ondo. Unfortunately, the Oshimawe had already been killed, but he was able to quench the riot and bring everything to normalcy. So the that was the first significant part, which is the death of Ayikiti, and which brought about the involvement of Ife. The second one was the fact that when Ibadan was moving their troops, and they have been blockaded by so many fronts, so they wanted to march through Ile-Ife in order to gain access into the war front in Ilesha. Because if you can imagine geographically, in order to get to Ilesha, you have to get to Ife first. And in order to get to Messi, where the war actually started, you needed to have cut through Ilesha. So there was the need for Ibadan troop to move through Ife land in order to gain access to Ijesha. Unfortunately, the Ibadan troop were denied permission to, pass through Ife, as a result of which an attack was launched against Ile-Ife. So Ife was defeated, and there was another camp, the Modaike camp, who had already aligned with the Ibadan forces. So what then happened was that the whole of Ife became occupied, and Ife town was pushed outside to the boundary, to a place called Ishoya. Ishoya is on a route map towards going to Ondo town. So, however, Daniel Ologbenla continued to remain in his camp in Okeibo, which is the village between Ondo town. It was a village then, now it's a big town, between Ondo town and Ile-Ife. So, and from that point, he was able to effectively defend Ife as well as Ondo. So, it was a situation whereby the Ibadan troop would have needed to go through Ile-Ife in order to launch an attack, and then they needed to launch another attack from Ondo, and Ondo town itself was already being established as an alternative trade route. So it was quite important for the entry from Ondo town itself to be well guarded. Otherwise, that could have a significant impact on the outcome of the war. And this was effectively handled by Prince Dere Ologbenla. And as a result of which, even while he was still fighting the war, he was actually elected as the new Oni of Ife. But because he was so busy with all the activities, his activities in the war front, he was not able to assume his throne as the Oni. He chose to remain in Okeibo and all the surrounding villages. So up to today, you will see a significant population of Ife people in places called Okeibo, Ifewara, Ifetedo. They are all within the same conurbation, within the forest, that has now emerged to become a very big, massive town. So a portion of this stretch of land is now carved into Ondo State, where places like Gari Jolode, Ifetedo, was featured prominently as part of the war front during that period, still remain part of Ile-Ife today. So so that's just the synopsis. In terms of overall essence of the war, the way I look at it, the interpretation of what has happened, I believe that it was an economic war, parties fighting within each other to take control of the economy of the land, because it started with the Ajele that was killed in Okemesi. The Ajele were there to collect taxes and, in form of goods, slaves, money, and then make returns to Ibadan. So, and then there was the need to be able to control the trade route. Ibadan was already blockaded because the trade route that they have from Kaba were blockaded from the north in Ilorin. The one that they had with Egba had been blockaded because Egba was already refusing to allow them to go through. Ijebu wanted to play neutral, and so they would not allow anything to pass through their land. And so that was the entire picture of what presented itself within the war situation of Kiriji. Thank you very much.